Unreported World, the fat camp that makes you fat. How young girls and women in Mauritania and West Africa are being force-fed almost 10,000 calories a day because big is seen as beautiful. But as Sahar Zand discovers, a severe drought has led many to try an even more extreme way of piling on the pounds.
This is 11-year-old Monet. She's about to be force-fed to make her fat. Her friend Hendu is joining her on a 9,000 calorie a day diet. They're growing up in a desperately poor country that's going through a devastating drought. But their moms believe fatter girls look wealthier and more beautiful, crucial when trying to attract a husband. To join Monet and Hendu, we're driving through Mauritania into the Sahara Desert. I'm soon put to work.
I hope I do a useful job.
They're preparing a special tent to force-feed the girls during the rainy season, which will last 2 months. Food is more plentiful then, but families will go without to help the fattening process.
I would make a useless nomad.
These nomads survive by keeping camels and goats. A married daughter means one less mouth to feed. Monet is only 11, but a quarter of girls in poor communities marry before they're 15.
Why? You don't think you're pretty now?
Monet and Hendu agree to let me weigh them.
Take your shoes off.
To find out how healthy they are.
39. Her BMI is 16.2. For her age, that's very normal. Hendu, stand straight. 53. For Hand, she's also a healthy weight. So both girls are healthy weights for their age and their height.
By the end of the feeding season, their parents hope they'll put on over a stone, over 7 kilos. Monet's mom Tahir will be in charge of the feeding.
What are your biggest wishes and dreams for your daughter? How would you feel if she never succeeds to get fat?
Everything is ready for the feeding to start the next morning. Day 1, and Tahir is preparing the first meal of the day. She's been a belaha, a force feeder, for years. But until now, she's never force-fed her own daughter. Around a quarter of Mauritanian girls are force-fed. But in rural areas, it can be as high as 3/4.
How long do they have to consume all of this? Is it all for today? What if you push her so hard that she ends up getting hurt? What if what you want for her isn't good for her?
The long-term health risks for the girls include diabetes, heart disease, and kidney failure. Tahir makes Monet and Hendu each drink a liter of sweetened camel's milk. That's followed by porridge. And then couscous. It takes the girls 2 hours to force down all the food. This is just breakfast. But each girl has already eaten about 3,000 calories, equivalent to 10 cheeseburgers. Extra weight makes girls look older, as if they've reached puberty, putting more pressure on Monet to marry young.
You want to get married? No. Why not? But your mom says that girls here should get married when they're 12, 13 years old.
While lunch is cooking, the women introduce me to fashion, Mauritania style.
Cool. Now I'm getting a Mauritanian makeover.
I've brought some magazines to find out what they think of other countries' ideas of beauty.
So in here, they put pictures of women that everybody wants to look like and dress like. What do you think about her body? What do you think that where I come from, women starve themselves and go on diets and make themselves throw up to lose weight?
لا ما احنا موزينها قريه المرأة لابد تعود غليظة شوي تعود تحشي البس. وهذا اللي سقوطه ويا الراجل، احنا الرجال والعليات بيناتهم فرق. تعود المرأة قليظة شوي والراجل رقيق.
Kim Kardashian, she's meant to be, she's very beautiful and she's very curvy, she's actually big.
أبوه. هي أبوه زين. هذا هو الزين. هي زينة. شوي زين فورمها زين.
So you like Kim Kardashian?
أبوه. من فوق رقيقة ومن تحت زين. الله. زينة زينة.
Okay. But Kim Kardashian is an exception. So how about this woman? Right now, she's considered one of the most beautiful women on the planet right now.
إذا كان تقريض من هون يعود زين تعود كرش كبيرة يعود زين. هي كبيرة
The women here insist men think fat is beautiful. I wonder if that's true. Abu Bakri is one of the group's leaders.
المرأة قليظة تقول الرجال أنا لا من الرجال قريحتي أنا بعد في نفسي على أن المرأة قاع ما هي قليظة ما يلوح فيش بين لي المرأة القليظة فيها ياسر من الراحة يشبروا الراجل منين هنا مثلا هنا الزوجية وذا الشيء مو هناك عندنا احنا رجالة موريتانيا ذيك المرأة القليظة من المرأة الأخرى.
One personal question though, am I fat or am I skinny? Like, what do I have to do to look better?
قلها على أنها هي وسط مسالي قلها شيء من الشحم لأنها وسط بعد وعلى أنها بالنسبة لي ياسر من الرجال ما هي شيء عنده غير يقلها تعود عن فرم حتى شوي ومولياك تعود.
It's lunchtime. Monet and her friend Hendu are made to force down another 4,000 calories. Each girl has now eaten the equivalent of more than 20 cheeseburgers. Hendu's mom Fatima too uses her stick to make sure the girls keep going.
How do you convince her to carry on?
أنا نفرصيها نكردها منين تعود ما تبغى تتبلع ونكردها على أصحاباتها ونقبضها منين تقلبني نقبضها ندير فيها حبل ونضركها حذاي.
Do you not feel bad when you do this?
هي شافتني هذا هذا هو الزين عليها قريعة قبلك يقعد عنها أنا ندور فيها أنا مالي أمها ونبقيها يا قال ندور مالي نبقي شيء زين عليه وتوه ندير فيها تركه شوي مدة نهار والله اثنين حبل يعود ماني عقد عقدة فتين.
Monet and Hendu's evening meal brings today's calorie count to a massive 9,000, almost twice what a heavyweight boxer eats, and nearly 5 times the World Health Organization's recommendation for girls their age. By the end of the feeding season, they'll be eating 16,000 calories a day. Suddenly, the food has to be cleared away.
There's a massive sandstorm coming this way, and we have to take cover. We've had to pack everything up.
Come on, get in the car, get in the car.
Oh my God.
Early the next morning, I discover a group of younger girls being force-fed in a camp nearby.
Hi, salam alaikum. Sahar, شو اسمك? Zainabu and Zahra.
Fatimatu, Breha and Zahra are all under 10 years old. The feeder Saida is expanding their stomachs with milk and couscous to permanently increase their appetites.
Is this for each girl, or do they share this?
هذا كلهم لا يتجبر منه واحد. زارت تفني صد علينا. صدوا شراعي. هو الشرب الصغير.
When the girls feel unwell, the feeder tells them to make themselves sick so they can keep eating. Watching the girls eat, I can see why this is often referred to as gavage, the term used for force-feeding geese to make foie gras.
You okay? What's wrong, Freha? Show me where it hurts. Have you been sick?
لا تقف الاشياء اللي اخليها الراس والوقوف.
Are you still gonna make her do gavage?
نتعذروا.
Is this normal? Is she gonna be okay?
يقولوا قاعد طمع يقولها يعطيه تاقر شهرين والله في ولا طمع.
This looks like child abuse, but no law specifically forbids it. Fatimatu's dad Abdullahi tells me force feeding is good for her.
ذيك كيف ضيعتها هم الخير خامرين الدنيا يملكوا ياسر من هاي الدنيا وهو معوذ بالله من توي تتلقط كيف تبوبيها سمعتي بهاك السبب دا ماشيين بين الحفة واللين.
Putting pressure on your body to look a certain way, especially for us women, is nothing new. I've done it, my girlfriends have done it. But what makes this quite different and a bit shocking is that these are little girls, and this pain and torture, which could potentially have quite serious health issues, is being put on these girls by their parents.
I rejoin Tahir, who is preparing more food for her daughter Monet and her friend Hindu. But Tahir has a question for me.
The feeder just asked if we have any medication that could help her daughter gain more weight. Let's see.
She says these empty bottles contain drugs that help girls get fat.
Okay, so
She's even used them herself to put on extra weight to keep attractive.
where did you hear about this? Who told you about this?
لا عيت انا بشوف اعلانات قرات انا عدتهم هي صرنا ننشرهم هي انا بعد من نفسي قبل كنت نعمل وحتى هذا عقبت بالتالي عدت لي انا عمل وكين حس بي لين نرقد تمشي دي تنمل حس بي سوارق وتو خليها عنه.
The drugs come from the capital Nouakchott. I head there. I want to find out more about this dangerous trade. I go straight to one of the largest hospitals in the city.
Let's do this.
The doctors won't talk on camera, but tell me the drugs are easy to buy.
I've found a couple of girls who are willing to help me find the drugs, and they're dressing me up so I look like a local, helping me go undercover.
They explain the drugs aren't only bought by force feeders. Many of their friends buy them to put on weight and look glamorous. They guide me to a major market, and I film them with a hidden camera. It's illegal for anyone but licensed pharmacies to sell medication, but I can see at least 10 stalls selling medicines. We approach the first of them. They buy a steroid, dexamethasone, which affects the body's metabolism. And an antihistamine, cyproheptadine, which has the side effect of increasing weight. With the drugs they've bought, a woman can pile on weight very quickly, risking problems like a heart attack or kidney failure.
Thank you. That was too easy. I was told it was easy, but this was just, I mean, they weren't even trying to hide it. They are openly displaying these drugs on top of all these other day-to-day things that they're selling, like necklaces and, I don't know, lipsticks. It was that easy.
The next morning, I meet the Iveco family. They know how dangerous these drugs are. Miriam says her daughter Eza took a steroid meant for animals. Her skin began to turn black.
تقول عنه ماشي بين الجل والحب عن الجل انتفخ راقب عنها.
The next day, Iza died. Despite what's happened, Aminetu tells me she now takes the same drug that killed her sister.
How do you think your mom would feel, especially after what happened to your sister, if she did find out that you're taking these pills too?
كده يقعد موزن عنتها مهمونة عنتها بخداك هي موزن عنتها عن من تتعمل شي من الدواء قط جاب لها ما طرخت عنتها بشيات وياخذ يقعد موزن عنتها وزاقيل عليه.
There are no figures on how many women are using these drugs to put on weight or how many are dying. But everyone I spoke to said the use of these drugs is widespread.
This is a society where a woman's biggest power is to be beautiful. And to be beautiful, you have to be fat. That's it. And that really sets the priority for what these women do and the length they're willing to go to achieve that ideal.
In the desert, Monet and Hendu are still in the feeding tent. It's their fourth day being force-fed. They tell me they're feeling nauseous and tired.
When you're a mummy and your daughter says, "Mummy, I don't want to do gavage. I don't want to be fat," what would you tell her? And if she says, "I don't think fat is pretty," best way for me to really understand gavage and what it feels like and get a more realistic idea about it. I'm gonna have to try it myself.
It's the same huge breakfast as before, rich in calories, carbs, and sugar. It takes us 3 hours to force down all the food. It's not even lunchtime, and we've each consumed 1,000 calories more than I normally eat in a day.
I really need to go Mastara. I'm so full. And I've been instructed to go out for a little walk to help the food settle before lunch. It really is like a marathon. It's really filling and dry, and you have to keep drinking it, putting it down with water, and it's just like not very nice. It's like a really weird texture. And my tummy really hurts, and it's quite, look at that. It's quite swollen.
After barely half an hour, it's time for a calorie-rich lunch. Greasy white rice, vegetables, nuts, and chicken. I can't take it anymore and have to stop. But Monet is forced to continue.
My tummy hurts, I feel really bloated, I feel sleepy, I can't really think. I'm constantly thirsty, but I just can't. It's horrible. It's like everything I eat, it just stays right here, it just builds up. I can't believe girls as young as 5, 6 years old have to consume a similar amount day in, day out.
Monet and I both feel pressure to look a certain way, but I at least have the freedom to choose. Only when more women in Mauritania have the chance of an independent life will they also have that freedom.
Unreported World is in Nicaragua, where a year of violent protest against President Daniel Ortega has led to a crackdown against the opposition and any criticism of the government. Independent newspapers, TV channels and bloggers are being silenced as journalists face intimidation and violence. Sahar Zand investigates what it's like to report the news when telling the truth can land you in jail.
I'm undercover in Managua, the capital of Nicaragua. On my way to La Prensa, one of the few newspapers that dares to criticize the government of President Daniel Ortega.
I'm constantly so nervous and on a lookout for the police or anyone who may spot us filming. If they see us filming, they would confiscate the camera, detain us, and then eventually deport us, so no film. Police, put it down.
Outside the La Prensa office, we again hide our camera. The paper's journalists have warned us that the police watch the entrance.
It's here.
Inside, the news desk is planning the day's reporting.
Can I join your meeting? You're okay?
Yvette Mongoya is covering the reopening of universities, which were at the heart of the anti-government protests, if she finds students who will talk.
What are your biggest worries covering this today?
Buena parte de la población teme a estar entrevistados. Entonces, si su nombre aparece en un periódico, los van a correr del trabajo o peor aún, los pueden matar.
The United Nations says the police have arrested hundreds of people, including journalists, to silence critiques of the government.
As Yvette's editor, what are your biggest security concerns?
Que no la agredan, que no la vayan a echar presa. Ya Yvette en algunas ocasiones ya ha sido agredida por la policía durante las protestas.
Yvette shows me footage of when she was attacked, covering an anti-government demonstration where police killed 2 students. The security forces have killed over 300 people since protests began in 2018.
Eran como 6 patrullas de la policía. Ellos iban disparando balas de goma. En esa ocasión me dieron, pero creo que fue acá en el brazo.
Moments earlier, the police had beaten Yvette. That's her in blue and white. Her colleague is screaming, "On with the press." It didn't stop them being targeted. As protests grew, security forces killed more than 300, according to Amnesty International. The government denies this, saying many of those killed were policemen.
Yvette,
Sí.
this is obviously very traumatic, and I can see you're still very affected months and months later.
Que ya lo que pasó es algo que no podemos cambiar, pero el futuro sí lo podemos cambiar y como periodista ese es nuestro deber.
La Prensa's managers say they've had to lay off journalists because the paper's independent reporting means companies are frightened to advertise with them. Yvette and photographer Uriel Molina head off to the universities that sparked last year's unrest.
It's not safe for us to go in the same car, so I'm going to have to go in a taxi and just follow them from quite a safe distance. That's the university we're trying to enter, and it's the country's biggest university.
For the government, reopening of the universities shows life is back to normal. But guards are keeping out students who took part in the protests, and journalists too.
Okay, they're negotiating with the guards. It doesn't look good. Oh, they're coming back down. They couldn't even get in. He takes a picture of that. I guess they're gonna try to make this a part of their story, the fact that they're not allowed in. This is so frustrating. So many stories don't get told because the government has made sure to put pressure on journalists any way they can. There is police everywhere.
The police and army are under the direct control of President Ortega. According to his critics, since his re-election in 2006, the former Marxist revolutionary has amassed huge personal power. Yvette tries a second university. Again, the security guards refuse entry. And we are beginning to attract attention.
Go, vamos. We had a car with a bunch of guys behind us that looked quite dodgy, and they were just watching me constantly, so I think it's time to move on.
They may be paramilitaries, armed supporters of the president, responsible for the many violent attacks on journalists and opposition figures. They try a third university. And at last, they get in. I film on my phone as Yvette learns half of the students have not come back to the college. Some blacklisted, others too scared to return. It's a huge number, and it gives Yvette a story the government doesn't want told. Before filing her story, Yvette takes me to a church nearby to show me how brutal the crackdown on the opposition can get. It's where 150 students fled to last year when the police broke up a demonstration. Mama! Mama, perdóname! Police and paramilitaries fired on them for 12 hours, killing 2 students.
La policía cerró todo el perímetro, pero mucha gente llegó hasta algunas cuadras y la gente estaba presionando para que los paramilitares dejaran a los estudiantes y pues que no les siguieran disparando. Yo vine en la madrugada y cuando nosotros logramos entrar aquí a este templo, en este lugar hubo 2 estudiantes muertos.
Yo entré a hacer fotos aquí, fui la primera que entró con una foto aquí. Hice fotos de...
These are all the gunshots from outside.
Sí, cuando se fueron los muchachos y entramos aquí, yo hice fotos de los... Y estamos testigos, disparos.
Oh my God.
Y como puedes ver en las paredes, ese tipo de edificios, pues lo que indica es que eran armas de alto calibre las que estaban utilizando.
De guerra. Bye bye. Bye bye. Cuídense.
Looking at these bullet points, it's just quite extraordinary. I mean, on the surface, Nicaragua seems quite calm. Not much seems to be happening outside. But when you hear people's stories, especially journalists and students, and come to places like this and see like bullets, you realize that Nicaragua may actually be a nation at war.
This country has been there before. A civil war 30 years ago claimed more than 30,000 lives. President Ortega says those who oppose him are terrorists trying to overthrow a democratically elected leader. As well as newspapers, the government has been shutting down independent TV stations. This 24-hour news station was broadcasting last December when the picture was suddenly cut. An urgent plea for help followed.
Urgente, urgente, antimotines, aquí en las afueras de 100% Noticias. Hay paramilitares, aquí adentro también. Esto es una emergencia, se quieren llevar preso a nuestro director Miguel Mora.
The channel director Miguel Mora was arrested for terrorism and inciting hatred because of the channel's reporting. He's still awaiting trial. A few weeks ago, he recorded a video message in his prison cell.
El periodismo nicaragüense está pasando uno de sus peores momentos en la historia. Están criminalizando la libertad de prensa, están criminalizando la libertad de expresión.
His channel remains off air. I head across the capital to visit one of the few remaining independent TV stations. You see posters of Daniel Ortega everywhere, together with his wife, the Vice President Rosario Murillo.
I'm very keen to find out how a film crew operates in comparison to a newspaper and what sort of dangers they have to deal with.
Channel 10 still manages to broadcast 3 news bulletins a day.
Aclara que dicha organización política no tiene ninguna
I'm meeting reporter Valesca Rivera.
How are you?
She's happy for us to follow her on assignment, but warns we keep her low profile so the police don't see us.
The finger is gone.
Pues ya ha ocurrido otros incidentes en que han deportado a otros periodistas extranjeros, pues preferiríamos que estuvieran un poco a distancia.
Today, she's heading to court, covering the case of 3 women arrested for taking part in a demonstration. They've been charged with terrorism under a new law passed by Daniel Ortega last year that outlaws anyone who supports or reports on anti-government protests. On the way to court, she spots the chance to film another story she's working on. She's learned that petrol stations owned by people who oppose the president are being shut down. They're not sure whether to risk stopping. Police are guarding the forecourts on the lookout for protesters or press.
Oh, they're turning. They've just done a quick report here, and before the police gets here, they have to get out. They were literally there for less than a minute. We've lost her. They just drove off really fast.
¿Aló? Avanzamos un poco porque no sé si nos notaron que una patrulla nos siguió, es porque ellos notaron que estábamos grabando la estación.
The police basically started following them when they were near the petrol station. So for now, camera, put it down, put it down. A big group of police just all over the place. It's really unsettling.
They managed to shake off their police tail and tell us to meet them at the courthouse. The courts aren't independent. A Supreme Court judge and longtime ally of the president recently resigned, saying he'd created a police state. Valeska has arranged to interview the lawyer of the jailed protesters.
They've just pulled up their car near one of the gates that has the least amount of security, but even that is pretty secure. And they're just waiting for the lawyer. And as soon as they come out, they're gonna rush to the gate to try and get an interview with them. And I'm gonna be filming with my iPhone from here on.
As Valeska gets her interview, out of shot, I notice police taking pictures of her. It's a form of intimidation, she says. Journalists suffer all the time.
Let's go, let's go. Let's go. Roland, you have to go. Keep the bottle back. Hot.
Back in the studio, she tells me what the lawyer revealed about her clients.
No.
Ya de hoy van a tener una audiencia. 3 de ellas, sin embargo, no llegaron. Fue confirmado que ellas recibieron una paliza en el sistema penitenciario La Esperanza.
The authorities deny this, but Valeska reports what she's been told.
Esta señaló de que no era cierto, ¿verdad? La golpiza de que...
That evening, Valeska invites me to her home. She lives with her husband Harvey, daughter Mariana, and her parents.
How many of the channels are owned by the government and how many are still independent?
Canal 12 es del gobierno. Canal 4 también es oficialista. Canal 6 es del gobierno. Canal 8 es también del gobierno. Y Canal 13 es oficialista o gubernamental.
Many of the surviving channels are largely owned by the Ortega family, which has wide-ranging business interests. Valeska had to move recently because of threats against her and her family. There was even a suspicious robbery.
Cabeza, salí en la madrugada con mi esposo a buscar un taxi y se acercaron 2 motorizados y nos apuntaron a la cabeza
What was going through your mind when you had a gun to your head?
Pero ellos me decían que querían el celular, no querían ningún otro objeto de valor, no me preguntaban por dinero, solo por mi celular.
Velasco believes journalists' phones are being stolen to access their contacts and view their pictures and videos.
Preocupado todo el día, de hecho hasta que ella viene a la casa como ahora mismo, es que yo ya me siento tranquila y
todas las mañanas la vuelvo a ver y le prometo que voy a regresar cada noche para verla. Y voy a cumplir con esa promesa todos los días. Voy a regresar cada noche para verla.
Downtown, a statue of the late Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez, who financed Ortega's re-election campaign. And just as Chavez did, Ortega has grabbed presidential term limits and controls every branch of government.
I'm on my way to meet a blogger called Emmanuel Diaz, who is behind one of the most popular blogs in the country. He is known for writing very controversial, daring things. He is one of the last critical voices still remaining in Nicaragua.
As we arrive, Manuel Diaz is writing a blog for his hundreds of thousands of followers. And he doesn't mince his words. He once called President Ortega a baby killer. It's got him into trouble.
That's a picture of you in jail.
It says everyone who sold their country and terrorists, their time will come and they will pay for their acts. They're not using a law. They're basically just giving an excuse, and with that excuse is enough to take you to jail and leave you there for 30 years and torture you and do everything they want to you.
Manuel suspects that some of the posts are orchestrated by officials inside government, but he can't prove it.
What were they saying? What were the most vicious ones?
I don't know, we gotta kill this guy or whatever, and then...
Is that your telephone number?
That was my telephone number at the time.
You've been saving all of them?
Yeah, because of my process to ask for asylum.
Right.
He can't take the threats anymore. He reveals that today's blog is his last in Nicaragua. Tomorrow, he's going to flee the country.
What do you think you will miss the most?
The garden. Like we had a miscarriage between these two, and that tree is in honor of the baby. So that was one of the first things that I had to do, because it didn't cross my mind that I had to leave the country, and I was like, I'm sorry, I have to take care of the living ones now.
How do you feel that you may never return to this home?
I don't like it a bit. I mean, I always like living here, so for me it's very painful.
Moments like this, do you regret maybe writing your blog?
No, I mean, no, it's like, do you regret being who you are? I mean, I can't. No.
What makes this quite sad is that his story is not unique. He's one of the many, many journalists who've had to escape in the past few months alone just because they were journalists and were doing their jobs.
They left the next morning for the US, where they claimed political asylum. Their case is still being considered. Manuel joins the 60,000 Nicaraguans who have left since the protests began. Before leaving, I returned to the offices of La Prensa.
is a recent issue of La Prensa, something that has resonated with a lot of journalists here. A blank front page.
It's a brave stand, but Yvette tells me another much more basic problem could well shut down the print run of the oldest newspaper in Nicaragua. It will close in weeks if they don't receive further supplies of paper. Customs officers blocked their last shipment back in September.
No necesariamente el gobierno necesita encarcelar a los periodistas. Asfixiar económicamente a un medio de comunicación también lleva al cierre de espacios informativos. Eso es algo triste porque la prensa ya va a cumplir 93 años.
Around 700 of President Ortega's political opponents, including journalists, remain in jail. President Ortega's war to silence free speech and opposition voices continues.